Welcome back to Trigger Point Tuesday. Today we're going to talk about the forearms. Now we've covered the forearms in the past, but that's a 15-minute video. There's some great information on it, so if you want to go back and check it out, be my guest. But today we're going to condense that just a bit, and we're going to talk about some elbow pain and some ways you can work through the forearms. Now the first thing I want you to do is understand that a lot of that pain people feel down here, whether it's lateral epicondylitis, or what they call tennis elbow, or whether it's medial epicondylitis, or what they call golfer's elbow, a lot of that can stem from the shoulder. So the first thing I want you to do is check shoulder range of motion if you're dealing with elbow pain or tightness in the forearms. So the first thing we'll do, come up against a wall here, take your heels up against the wall, rear end up against the wall, head and shoulders. Try to get just a natural position here in your low back. And let's first start with the shoulder flexion test. And this is going to test the length of the lats. So you should be able to get to about 180 degrees here. The rib cage should stay down in a neutral position, and you're not arching the back. If you start to compensate, you have to arch the back or you bend the elbows, then we know we have to go after the lats. The next one we'll test from here. Elbow is going to be about shoulder width, or shoulder height, Neutral position there in the low back, upward rotation. And here we're testing some of those rotators, but we're also testing the ability of that shoulder blade to sort of go down whenever we go into upward rotation. Should be able to get to a 90-degree angle there. And then we're going to come here, be sure those shoulder blades again stay against the wall, and let's check downward rotation. Should be able to get down to about 70 degrees or so. Level with the torso is normally a pretty good gauge, but also this shoulder blade should stay back, not anteriorly rotated. We'll see a lot of people compensate here in order to get down there and they think they're fine. So here, we're going into internal rotation and we're testing the external rotators. Here, whenever we go into upward rotation, we're testing those internal rotators. So any sort of limitation, be sure you go after those areas first. If there is no limitation, then we can go ahead and address those muscles down around the forearms. So let's get after it. Once we've established that the problem's not from the shoulder or thoracic spine, then we can go after the muscles that actually attach to that elbow joint. So the first thing we're going to look at is the extensors. So all of those extensors will come off that lateral epicondyle, and they basically run down into the hand. Now the way I would work those is to take a ball. We're going to start down here close to the wrist. I'm going to build compression. I use my block so I have room for my hand to move. Build compression here. Going to pivot 2 times through there. And then apply pressure this way. So notice how my hand is. And then I'm going to pull my wrist into a flexed position. So essentially I'm pulling all those extensors through this compression. And that's where we get that myofascial compression technique. So again, I'm going to pivot 1, pivot 2, apply that compression and pull towards the elbow as I pull the wrist down. I'm going to slowly repeat that all the way up to the elbow. Pull down for 1, keep that compression towards my elbow, down for 2, 2 pivots, pull down for 1, down for 2. Remember that movement right there, that movement of the wrist is what's essentially going to wring out that muscle, and that's where we get that relative motion and that actual myofascial release. Now, on the inside part here, we have all the flexors that come to the medial part of the elbow. Basically going to do that the same way. Palm up, start from here, pivot 2 times, and then try to pull into that extended position. Pivot for 1, pivot for 2, pull down, and repeat that process all the way up the elbow, being sure you get that motion. And you can spend more time than I am here if you need to, all the way up. Now the one that we can't forget is the brachioradialis. So if you go into a flexed position here and resist, you can see it pop up. So to get that, we're going to take the arm here and basically the same thing. We're going to pivot for 1, pivot for 2, and then just try to get some motion. You can add a little bit of extension there to the elbow. So I'm going to take this down, extend that elbow just a bit so I'm pulling through that range of motion, and repeat that up. Pivot for 1, pivot for 2, laterally flex, and extend the elbow slightly. So Work up the extensors, work up the flexors, work that brachioradialis. You can get up into the shoulder a little bit as well if you need to. But that's it for the forearms. Next week, we're going to be using the grid. We're going to look at some stuff with low back pain. And as always, leave your comments on Facebook, leave some ideas, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave those as well. And we'll see you next week for Trigger Point Tuesday.